It's that time again. Feisty Fridays. I want to talk about strategy. I want to talk about strategy and leadership. And I also want to talk about a type of strategy that almost nobody names. And the reason I think nobody names it is because, well, certainly my understanding of leadership was that we never considered this, and that's safety. And I'm not talking about team safety. I'm not talking about culture decks. I'm talking about that type of safety that we define in 2026 as internal safety. It's something that we simply, in my experience as a leader in the last 50 years, never considered. And because whether we as leaders realize it or not, most of our behavior in pressure situations is, well, because we're human, it's driven by one thing. And the thing that drives leaders is actually answering the question of, do I feel safe right now? And here's why I think this is the case. We don't want to ask ourselves the question, but it's the lack of asking the question that actually changes everything. In fact, when we can't say we feel safe as leaders, I think it shifts the entire culture room dialogue. We try to control more, we become more certain, even though we're not. And I know what I'd certainly do, and that is I listen less. Over the years, I've discovered it isn't really because I'm a bad leader that I do those things. It's actually, I think, because my own system, my own body, my own survival instinct, everything, it's actually trying to protect me. And I've done this for years and not recognized that I actually don't feel safe. And so I have controlled rooms instead of leading in them. I have pushed for clarity when I didn't just feel uncertain. I felt like the lack of certainty was the most important thing. And it wasn't because I didn't care in those rooms. I did care deeply, but I didn't feel safe not knowing and showing that I didn't know. I worked for a lot of places where safety just wasn't important. And here's what I think I missed and what I think leadership development often misses. It's that as humans, we can't outskill a dysregulated system. As leaders, if we're dysregulated, we're going to go to our default every time. And I think our default is we don't feel safe. We don't feel certain. And real leadership, the more I recognize this, real leadership is not about having the answer. It's about having the capacity to lack the answer and to stay present without it. That is stability. That is what people actually trust. That is what distinguishes us. So, this is one area that I'm working on in my own work, my own life. I'm digging deeper. I'm doing it because, my leadership anyway, isn't breaking down because I have lack of skill. And I'm going to proclaim that. I got wicked mad skills, but I don't feel safe all the time. And as a result, I behave in ways that I want to protect me before thinking consciously about what's going to be the right judgment call for the whole situation, not just for me. So I've been telling you I'm working on things, and I really am. And part of working on those things is paying attention to different things. So this week, I want to challenge you. What's going on in your life and in your work right now that you're trying to control instead of asking yourself what doesn't feel safe? I know for me, I'm feeling out of control in a bunch of areas, and I'm not asking myself, do I feel unsafe? And is that why I am feeling out of control? But I need to, and I want to challenge you to. We need to feel safe enough to ask ourselves if we feel safe. And that's scary. It's super scary because safety is not something that we have been able to value. And for some of you who are novice professionals and novice leaders, you're coming up, you understand this in a way that I so respect. Somehow those of us who are the old enough to be your parents, we somehow raised our own children wiser than we were raised in asking about safety, in considering the whole person and holistic safety. So kudos to many of you who do ask those questions. And you know what? For those of us who think that's a weak move, for those of us who want to perhaps even disregard younger professionals who care more about safety, shame on us. Shame on our behavior. We need to stop. We need to listen. And we need to ask ourselves, do we feel safe? Because my safety enables my leadership. And when I don't feel safe and I can share that, I actually have seen my own thoughts, ideas, and the momentum of the room change to create space for me and also to enable me to actually lead wisely. It's the posture of asking yourself if you feel safe. That alone can humble yourself, relegate your ego, and get you more engaged with the team. So that's what I want to challenge you to think about this week. I wrote about it in my newsletter, and the newsletter drops tomorrow on LinkedIn. Follow me for all of these continuing thoughts and ideas. And I am working on some things. I'm pulling together what I think probably will eventually kind of be known as an ecosystem of what it really means to be feisty, what it's meant for me and my journey, and also what it means to be a feisty human. So stay with me. We're going places, and ask yourself, do you feel safe? And if you don't, I encourage you, my friend, find some safety. Reach out if I can help. See you next week.